My phone vibrated in my pocket as I threw the first handful of dirt onto her coffin. It felt like I was desecrating the moment, but something forced me to look. An unknown number, a message that froze my blood. I'm still alive. Trust no one. The contact name was Emily, my wife. The same woman everyone was mourning inside that mahogany box in front of me. The dirt slipped through my fingers. I looked up, and for the first time since the funeral began, I truly saw my sons. Charles was impatiently adjusting his Italian tie. Gregory checked his Swiss watch every 5 minutes. Where was the grief? Where were the tears for the woman who brought them into the world? My name is William Johnson. I'm 68 years old, and until 3 days ago, I thought I knew my family. Now, standing in front of the grave of Emily, my partner of 45 years, all I see are strangers. The priest finished his sermon as I put my phone away. The words were lost in the cold wind of the town where we built our life, and where now, supposedly, Emily would rest forever. Our house was only a 20-minute drive from the cemetery, a mansion I built with the sweat of my own hands, starting from a small mechanic shop to becoming the owner of the largest chain of car dealerships in the state. "Dad, it's time to go, Charles," my firstborn interrupted, placing a hand on my shoulder with fake compassion. "The guests are waiting for us at the house." I nodded, unable to speak. My mind was still fixed on that impossible message. We got into the black SUV. The driver drove in silence as I studied my sons' profiles, searching for any trace of the love Emily and I had given them. Charles, a corporate lawyer, always hungry for more. Gregory, a financier, calculating since he was a boy. Both successful, both as cold as the marble of the headstone we had just left behind. The patio of the house was filled with people dressed in black. Neighbors, friends, business partners, local politicians. They all wanted to offer their condolences to old William Johnson, the man who had built an empire from scratch, the mechanic who became a millionaire. I shook hands automatically, like a programmed doll, while my mind replayed the last few days. Emily's death had been sudden, a heart attack, while I was out of state, closing the deal on a new dealership. By the time I got home, she had already been declared dead. They wouldn't let me see her. "She's in bad shape, Dad," Gregory had said. "We've already taken care of everything. The funeral was organized in record time. The casket is closed." "And, out of respect," Charles explained. My phone vibrated again as they served coffee in the main living room. The same number. Check the security videos of the house. May 10th, 3:40 p.m., back garage. May 10th was the day Emily died, 3 days ago. Excusing myself, I walked to my office. I locked the door and turned on my computer. The security system had been Emily's idea last year, after a robbery attempt in the neighborhood. 16 cameras distributed throughout the property. I accessed the files and selected the date. May 10th. I found the recording of the back garage. 3:38 p.m. Emily walks in normally, looking for something on the shelves. 3:39 p.m. Charles appears behind her. They argue. Emily shakes her head several times. 3:40 p.m. My son shoves my wife against the wall. He yells at her. She cries. 3:41 p.m. Gregory enters. He's holding something in his hand. A syringe. Between the two of them, they restrain Emily. 3:42 p.m. My wife falls to the floor. She convulses. My sons watch, motionless. 3:43 p.m. Gregory checks his mother's pulse. He looks at Charles. He nods. I turned off the monitor. The buzz of conversations from the patio continued, oblivious to the hell I had just witnessed. My own sons had murdered my wife, and now they were out there, receiving condolences, faking grief. Another message arrived. You'll find a letter in our special place. I love you, W. You're Emily. Our special place. Only Emily and I knew that code. It was the secret compartment behind the bookshelf in our bedroom, where we kept important documents and some personal memories. With trembling legs, I went up the stairs to our room. Emily's scent still lingered in the air, her jasmine perfume, her lotions by the vanity, the bed where we had slept together for the last time, just a week ago. I activated the mechanism on the bookshelf, which slid open silently, revealing a small safe. I entered the combination 230978, the date we met. Inside, I found a sealed manila envelope, my name written in Emily's unmistakable handwriting. I opened it with shaking fingers. My dearest William, if you are reading this, it means my suspicions were true. Do not trust our sons. For months, I've noticed strange behaviors. Conversations that stop when I enter a room, unexpected visits from Charles when you're not home, financial documents that disappear. I hired a private investigator. His name is Michael Sanders, a former federal agent. You will find his number at the end of this letter. He has all the proof. Charles and Gregory are in debt up to their necks. Failed investments, gambling, overvalued properties. They found out you changed your will last year, leaving a large part of our assets to charitable foundations. They couldn't accept it. I heard them, William. They were planning to eliminate both of us. First me, then you. A tragic accident, followed by your devastating depression and suicide. If I am dead when you read this, you must be careful. Pretend you know nothing. Contact Michael. He has prepared a plan. Forgive me for not telling you about this sooner. I wanted to protect you from this horrible truth. How do you tell a father that his sons are planning to murder him? I have loved you every day since I met you at that party all those years ago. You were my first and only true love. If I have died, do not mourn me for too long. Live, my love. Get justice, and then find peace. Forever yours, Emily. Tears blurred my vision. I held the letter to my chest as I sobbed silently. Emily had foreseen her death. She had tried to protect me until the very end. At the bottom of the envelope, I found a small card with a phone number and the name Michael Sanders. There was also a USB drive. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Quickly, I put the letter and the drive in the inside pocket of my jacket. I closed the safe and moved the bookshelf back into place just as the door opened. Dad, what are you doing up here alone? It was Gregory, with a smile that I now saw was loaded with deceit. The guests are asking for you. I needed a moment, I replied, discreetly wiping my tears. You know, remembering your mother. Of course, I understand. His gaze scanned the room, pausing briefly on the bookshelf. Do you need help getting down? No, son. I'm fine. Gregory nodded and offered his arm. I took it, faking weakness, leaning on the arm of the man I had just watched kill his own mother. My body trembled, but not from grief. It was rage, a cold, methodical rage that was beginning to build inside me. The rest of the afternoon passed like a slow-motion nightmare. I shook hands, received hugs, listened to words of comfort that slid off me without penetrating, all while watching my sons move among the guests like perfect hosts, receiving condolences for the mother they themselves had murdered. Richard Miller, my lawyer and friend of 30 years, approached me discreetly. William, whenever you need to go over Emily's papers, I'm at your disposal, he said in a low voice. There are certain matters we should attend to soon. What matters, Richard? I asked, studying his face. The life insurance, mainly. Charles mentioned to me that Emily increased it a few months ago, a considerable sum. I had never heard about such an increase. Emily and I shared all financial decisions, or so I thought. We'll talk about it later, I replied, keeping my expression neutral. Maybe tomorrow, when there are fewer people. Richard nodded and walked away. I watched him chat animatedly with Charles in a corner. Was my lifelong lawyer involved too? How deep did this conspiracy go? By 8 o'clock, the last guests had left. The house fell silent, now inhabited by only 3 men, a devastated father and 2 murderers. Dad, you should get some rest, Charles suggested, patting my back. It's been a very hard day for everyone. Yes, maybe you're right, I conceded, feigning exhaustion. Are you two staying here tonight? Of course, Gregory replied. We wouldn't think of leaving you alone right now. They didn't want to leave me alone. Of course not. The second part of their plan must already be in motion. Thank you, sons, I murmured, hugging them both, suppressing the urge to strangle them right there. I don't know what I'd do without you. I went up to my room, locked the door, and sat in the darkness. The silence of the house seemed to amplify the beating of my heart. I took out my phone and stared at Michael Sanders' number. It was almost 9 at night. Too late to call? I decided to send a message. This is William Johnson. Emily left me your letter. We need to talk. The reply came almost immediately. I've been waiting for you, Mr. Johnson. Do not use your regular phone to communicate with me. It is likely being monitored. In your garage, under the red toolbox, you will find a burner phone. Use it to call me. Trust no one inside your house. I stared at the message for a long time. Emily's paranoia had not been unfounded. She had prepared everything, anticipating the worst. I waited until the house was completely silent. At 11:30 p.m., I took off my shoes and slipped quietly out of the room. I went down the stairs, avoiding the steps that creaked, knowledge acquired from decades of living in this house. I crossed the kitchen and entered the garage. The red toolbox had been mine for years. I opened it carefully and lifted the top tray. Underneath, just as Michael had indicated, I found a small black cell phone with its charger. I turned it on. It had only one contact saved. MS. I returned to my room with the same stealth. Once safe, with the door locked, I dialed the number. Mr. Johnson. A deep voice answered on the first ring. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. Are you Michael Sanders? Yes, sir. Your wife hired me 2 months ago. I have all the information you need. But we can't talk on the phone. We need to meet. When? Tomorrow. Your sons are leaving at 10 a.m. to meet with the lawyer, Richard Miller. I know because I intercepted their communications. We'll have about an hour. There's a coffee shop on Morelos Avenue. The old one. I'll be at the back table at 10:15. I'll be there. I promised. Mr. Johnson, one last thing. The USB drive Emily left you. Do not look at it on your computer. Bring it with you tomorrow. And for God's sake, act normal. Your life depends on it. The call ended. I sat in the darkness, holding that small phone as if it were a life raft in a stormy ocean. Through the window, the moon illuminated the garden that Emily had designed with so much love. The rose bushes she pruned every morning, the fountain where the birds drank at dawn. Everything seemed so normal, so peaceful, and yet my world had collapsed in a matter of hours. I lay down fully clothed, too alert to change or try to sleep. The clock read 12:30 a.m. when I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Someone stopped in front of my door. The handle turned slowly, but the lock held. The footsteps moved away. Charles, Gregory, both. Had they come to check if their father was asleep, or to execute the next phase of their plan? My regular phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text message from Charles. Dad, are you awake? I heard noises in your room. Do you need anything? Lies. More lies, I replied. I'm fine, son. Just can't sleep. Tomorrow is another day. Get some rest, Dad. We love you. We love you. The cruelest words I had ever read. The sunrise found me sitting by the window, watching the light transform Emily's garden. I hadn't slept. I hadn't cried anymore. The initial shock had given way to a steely determination. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing an outfit appropriate for a recent widower. A dark shirt, gray pants. The watch Emily had given me on our last anniversary. I put both phones and the USB drive in my pockets. When I went down to the kitchen, I found my sons making breakfast. Dad, we didn't expect to see you up so early, Gregory exclaimed, pouring coffee into porcelain cups. I couldn't sleep much, I replied, sitting at the table. The bed feels so empty without her. Charles placed a plate of fruit in front of me. Eat something, Dad. You need to keep your strength up. Thanks, son. I picked up a piece of melon and studied it carefully before bringing it to my mouth. Could it be poisoned? Was this how they planned to get rid of me? A toxic breakfast served by filial hands? By the way, Dad, Charles began, sitting across from me. Gregory and I have to go out for a bit this morning. Richard wants us to review some preliminary papers about, well, legal matters. Mom's will, Gregory clarified, always more direct. Life insurance issues, things that have to be taken care of even if it's painful. I understand, I said, nodding slowly. What time will you be back? Before noon, for sure, Charles replied. Will you be okay alone for a little while? Of course. Maybe I'll go for a walk. The doctor always says walking is good for me. Good idea, Dad, but don't overdo it. We ate breakfast in an awkward silence, broken occasionally by trivial comments about the weather or sweetened memories of Emily. I barely touched my food, limiting myself to moving the fruit pieces around the plate and pretending to drink the coffee. At 9:45, my sons stood up simultaneously. We should get going, Charles announced, checking his watch. We'll be back soon, Dad. I walked them to the door, waving as Gregory's car pulled away down the driveway. The moment they were out of sight, I ran to my room. I grabbed a light jacket and the keys to my own car. The old coffee shop was a 10-minute drive. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the way, constantly looking around me. Paranoia was starting to set in, but perhaps it was justified. The place was small, cozy, with wooden tables and the aroma of freshly ground coffee filling the air. In the back, just as he had promised, a man in his 52nds, heavyset, with salt and pepper hair and a faint scar above his left eyebrow, raised his hand slightly as he saw me enter. I walked towards him, feeling the weight of curious gazes. No doubt my face had been in the local papers. The widower of the day. Mr. Johnson, the man greeted, standing up and shaking my hand firmly. Michael Sanders, please, sit down. I sat across from Michael Sanders, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. The coffee shop was quiet at that hour, with only a few tables occupied by people engrossed in their own conversations. First, Mr. Johnson, I need to make sure you weren't followed, Sanders said in a low voice, his eyes scanning the place. Your sons have people working for them, people I know from the scene. What scene? I asked. The criminal underworld of this city. I was a federal agent for 20 years. I know the local players. He paused. And now, some of them work for your sons. A chill ran down my spine. My sons, Charles and Gregory, had always been ambitious. But criminals? When did they cross that line? Did you bring the USB drive? I took the small device out of my pocket and handed it to him. Sanders pulled a thin laptop from his backpack, opened it, and plugged in the drive. Your wife was a brilliant woman, Mr. Johnson. She started to suspect when she found documents forged with your signature, transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. She hired me to follow the money trail. How much? I asked, dreading the answer. $12 million siphoned over the last 3 years from your companies. He turned the screen towards me. Here are the records. Forged signatures. Ghost contracts with suppliers that don't exist. I looked at the documents, recognizing names of fake companies and supposed subsidiaries I had never authorized. My signature, perfectly mimicked, appeared at the bottom of each document. Emily discovered all of this by reviewing the financial statements. When she confronted Charles, he denied everything, but she had already gathered enough proof. And that's why they killed her, I murmured, feeling a wave of nausea. Yes, but there's more. Sanders pulled a folder from his backpack. This is your wife's real autopsy. The official one was falsified by the medical examiner, an old friend of Charles. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The report was clear. Emily had died from poisoning with a substance called tetrodotoxin, a poison extracted from pufferfish, almost impossible to detect without specific tests. Tetrodotoxin causes progressive paralysis. It looks like a heart attack, Sanders explained. Emily was digging too deep. She found out they weren't just planning to steal your entire fortune, but they were also involved in money laundering for the Jalisco cartel. My sons, working for drug traffickers. My voice was barely a whisper. Your car dealerships were perfect for laundering money. Fake sales, over-invoicing, ghost customers. Sanders paused. But Emily found the real records. It's all on this drive. And why did I receive messages from her number after she died? She set everything up. She asked me to configure an automated system. If she didn't respond to a certain code within 4 hours, the messages would start being sent. An insurance policy, just in case her suspicions were true. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My Emily, always so smart, so cautious, fighting this conspiracy alone while I, blind with trust, continued to believe in the perfect family we had built. So, what now, Mr. Sanders? Do we go to the police? We can't trust the local police. The chief, Hernandez, has been on your son's payroll for years. We need to go directly to the federal prosecutor's office in the capital. But first, I need irrefutable proof, I said, feeling a cold determination replace the pain. I want confessions. I want to hear from their own mouths why they killed their mother. Sanders looked at me intently. That's dangerous, Mr. Johnson. I'm already dead to them, aren't I? They're just waiting for the right moment. Well, we're going to give them that moment. The plan was simple, but risky. I returned home before my sons, acting like the devastated father they expected to see. When they arrived from the lawyer's office, I noticed a certain tension in their faces. Everything okay with Richard? I asked innocently. Yes, Dad. Just boring paperwork, Charles replied, avoiding my gaze. I'd like to review those documents. After all, she was my wife. Gregory exchanged a quick glance with his brother. Of course, Dad. Maybe tomorrow. You should rest today. Actually, sons, I'd like to talk to you tonight. About the future. About the companies. This immediately caught their attention. Greed shone in their eyes like coins in the sun. Of course, Dad, Charles said, suddenly interested. Whenever you want. After dinner. In my office. I retreated to my room, pretending I needed to rest. In reality, I contacted Sanders on the burner phone. Everything was ready. He and 2 trusted former federal agents would be hidden in the garden, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. Dinner passed in an uncomfortable silence. Rosie, our lifelong cook, had prepared my favorite dish. I didn't take a bite, claiming a lack of appetite. In truth, I was still afraid they might try to poison me. "Let's go to the office," I finally said, getting up from the table. My office was my sanctuary. Dark wood walls, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, my mahogany desk, inherited from my father. In a display case, I kept my collection of antique watches, a passion I shared with Emily. On the desk, photographs of our life together. Our wedding, the birth of Charles, of Gregory, trips, anniversaries. A life I thought was perfect. I sat behind the desk, while my sons took the leather armchairs in front of me. Under my clothes, I wore a small recording device provided by Sanders. "Sons," I began, "I've been thinking a lot since Emily left us. About life, about our legacy." They both nodded with solemn expressions, so well rehearsed they were almost convincing. "I've decided to move forward with the succession of the companies. I want to retire completely." Their faces lit up like Christmas trees. "Are you sure, Dad?" Charles asked, trying to hide his excitement. "It's too soon after, Mom. On the contrary, your mother's death has made me see that life is too short. I want to enjoy my final years without worries." "That's a very wise decision," Gregory intervened, leaning forward. "We'll take care of everything. There's something else," I added, carefully measuring my words. "Emily's life insurance." Richard mentioned it was a considerable sum. They exchanged another quick glance. "Yes, Mom, increased the coverage a few months ago," Charles explained. "Almost $5 million. "How strange," I commented, feigning confusion. "Emily never mentioned anything about that to me. She probably wanted to surprise you," Gregory suggested. "You know how Mom was. Always thinking about the future." "Yes, Emily always thought about the future," I repeated, feeling the rage grow inside me. "So much so that she even prepared messages for after her death." The color drained from their faces. Charles sat up straighter in his seat. "What do you mean, Dad?" I took out my phone and showed them the message. "I'm still alive. Trust no one." "That's a sick joke," Gregory stammered. "Someone is using Mom's number. She also left videos," I continued, ignoring his comment. "Interesting videos. Like the one from the back garage on the day she died." Charles stood up, suddenly nervous. "Dad, I think you need to rest. The grief is making you imagine things." "I'm not imagining anything, Charles. I saw the video. I saw the two of you injecting something into your mother. I saw her convulsing on the floor while you watched her die. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife." Gregory stood up too, but not to approach me. He went to check that the door was closed. "You're confused, Dad," Charles said, his voice suddenly cold. "There is no video. The security system saves copies to the cloud. Emily made sure of that." I leaned forward. "Why did you do it? For money? Was your mother's life worth that much?" Gregory looked at Charles, as if waiting for instructions. My firstborn, always the leader, always the one making the decisions, took a deep breath. "You wouldn't understand, Dad. You never have. You built an empire, and then decided to give it away to strangers. The charitable foundations. Is that why? You killed your mother because I changed my will?" "You didn't just change it," Charles exploded. "You took what was ours, 50 years building an empire just to hand it out to strangers. Orphaned children, AIDS patients, rural schools. What do they have to do with us? They are people in need, Charles. Your mother and I wanted to leave a legacy beyond just money." "Your wife was on board with us," Gregory chimed in, his voice laced with contempt, "until she found out about the offshore accounts. Then she became a problem. A problem you solved with tetrodotoxin," I said, pronouncing each syllable clearly for the recording. "Pufferfish poison. Hard to get. Even harder to detect." "Where did you get it?" Charles smiled for the first time, a smile I didn't recognize on my son's face. "We have connections, Dad. Connections that you, with your outdated morality, would never understand. The Jalisco cartel," I stated, watching their reactions. "Money laundering through our dealerships. Emily found that out too, didn't she?" "Mom stuck her nose where it didn't belong," Gregory replied, slowly approaching the desk, "just like you are now." In that moment, I understood that the plan had worked too well. My sons were confessing. Yes, but they had also decided it was time to eliminate me. They wouldn't wait any longer. "The dose for you will be larger," Charles said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "We won't make the same mistake we did with Mom. She suffered too much." "You care so much that you'll give me a painless death?" I asked, feeling my voice break for the first time. Is this the love that Emily and I taught you? Love doesn't pay debts, Dad, Gregory answered coldly. And we have a lot of them. Charles pulled a syringe from his pocket. The clear liquid inside glistened under the lamplight. My own death, contained in a glass cylinder. It will be quick, he promised, walking around the desk to get to me. Then they'll find your body, the widower who couldn't bear the loss of his beloved wife. So romantic, so tragic. I pressed the emergency button on the device hidden under my clothes. The signal for Sanders. There's something you should know, I said, buying time. Emily isn't dead. They both stopped, confused. What nonsense are you talking about? Charles snapped. The body you buried wasn't Emily's. It was a decoy. She's in hiding, waiting for the right moment to present all the evidence against you. It was a desperate lie, but it worked. Doubt flickered across their faces. Gregory pulled out his phone. Call the medical examiner, he ordered his brother. Make sure it was her. At that precise moment, the office doors burst open. Michael Sanders and his two partners stormed into the room. Guns drawn, federal agents, on the ground, now. Charles, with the syringe still in his hand, lunged at me. A shot rang out in the room. The bullet hit his shoulder, sending him to the floor, screaming in pain. The syringe rolled away. Gregory, ever the calculator, immediately raised his hands. This is a misunderstanding, he said, in his best lawyer voice. We were just having a family conversation, a conversation about how you killed your mother and were planning to kill your father, Sanders replied, cuffing him. Is it all on tape, Mr. Johnson? I nodded, unable to speak, seeing my sons in handcuffs. Charles bleeding on the floor, Gregory's mask of composure finally shattered. It was an image I had never imagined, not even in my worst nightmares. The next few hours passed in a fever dream. Federal agents swarmed my house. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Richard, business partners, friends who had seen the patrol cars. The news spread through the city like wildfire. The sons of businessman William Johnson, arrested for the murder of their father. Sitting in the kitchen, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, I listened as Sanders coordinated the operation. Emily's body would be exhumed for a real autopsy. My sons' bank accounts, frozen, their accomplices, identified and pursued. Mr. Johnson, Sanders said, sitting across from me. You did an incredible job in there. Your wife would be proud. My wife is dead, I replied mechanically, and my sons are murderers. I have nothing to be proud of. You have justice. And that's something? Justice. A cold word. Insufficient. What good was justice when everything I loved was destroyed? My family, my legacy, my entire life. It had all turned to ash in a matter of days. What happens now? I asked. Your sons will face charges for premeditated murder, attempted murder, forgery, fraud, and money laundering. They won't see the light of day again. He paused. As for their partners in the cartel, that's another matter. More complex. More dangerous. Am I in danger? Temporarily, yes. The cartel won't appreciate their laundering operations being exposed. We'll have to move you to a secure location while we complete the investigation. A secure location, far from the house I had built with Emily, far from the memories, far from everything that had been my life for nearly 70 years. Can I visit her grave first? I asked, feeling the long-suppressed tears begin to flow. I need to say goodbye. Sanders nodded. Early tomorrow, with an escort. That night, alone in my room, guarded by federal agents, I looked at the family photos on my nightstand. Charles and Gregory as children, smiling, innocent. At what point did they become monsters? When did ambition devour their humanity? Was it my fault? Did I give them too much or too little? My phone vibrated. One last message from Emily's number. When it's all over, look in the lake house. I love you, E. The lake house. Our secret getaway. A small cabin we bought decades ago, before the business expanded, before the money, when we were just a young couple in love with 2 small children. I didn't mention the message to Sanders. Some things had to remain between Emily and me. The cemetery was quiet that morning. Dew covered the tombstones like the earth's tears. 2 federal agents escorted me, keeping a respectful distance as I knelt before Emily's grave. I kept my promise, my love, I whispered, placing white roses on the cold marble. Those responsible will pay. But at what cost? Our family is destroyed. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees, as if Emily were answering from somewhere beyond my understanding. I don't know how to go on without you. Without them? I'm alone now. I traced my fingers over her name carved in the stone. Emily Martinez Johnson, 1955 to 2025. Beloved wife and mother. The irony of that last word was unbearable now. As I stood up, I noticed something unusual, a small crack in the headstone just below her name. Examining it closer, I saw it wasn't a natural crack. Someone had etched, with some fine instrument, a tiny message. LH0522, Lake House. May Tuktavand, 5 days after her death. My heart raced. What did this mean? Another message from Emily, prepared before she died? Or something more impossible, more unthinkable? I said nothing to the agents. Some answers I had to find alone. 3 weeks later, the case was in full swing. The exhumation confirmed the presence of tetrodotoxin in Emily's body. The offshore accounts were traced. The connection to the cartel was exposed. Charles and Gregory, held in preventive custody, had pleaded not guilty despite the recordings. Richard Miller, my lifelong lawyer, turned out to be involved as well. He had forged documents and helped launder money. I was now living in a safe apartment in the city, under federal protection. My business empire was in the hands of temporary administrators, while the legal situation was sorted out. My life on pause. On May 20th, I requested permission to visit our cabin at the lake. I need to retrieve personal documents, I explained. They assigned 2 agents as my escort. The cabin was just as I remembered it. Small, cozy, with its wooden dock stretching out over the lake. We had been happy here, truly happy, before money and ambition tainted everything. I need a few minutes alone, I asked the agents, who nodded and remained outside, watching the surroundings. Inside, time seemed to have stood still. The same rustic furniture, the same photos on the walls, the same smell of wood and memories. I searched everywhere. Closets, drawers, under the floorboards. Nothing. Finally, I went to the small attic, accessible only by a folding ladder in the ceiling. There, among boxes of memories and old clothes, I found a sealed manila envelope, my name, written in Emily's unmistakable handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a letter, a small key, and a recent photograph. The photo showed a white house with a red-tiled roof, surrounded by trees. I didn't recognize it. I began to read the letter. My dearest William, if you are reading this, it means you found my messages, and things have gone according to plan. I am so deeply sorry for the pain you must be feeling now. What I am about to tell you will seem impossible, but you must believe me. I discovered our son's plans months ago. Not just the theft, not just the money laundering. I found out they were planning to kill us both. I hired Michael Sanders to investigate, but I also made my own preparations. I knew they were coming for me first. I heard them discussing it one night in Charles's office when they thought I was asleep. On May 8th, when you traveled out of state, I put my plan into motion. The woman you buried was not me, William. She was Maria Dolores Vasquez, a terminally ill patient from the hospital where I volunteer. No family, no one to claim her. She passed away that morning from natural causes. I paid the hospital director and the morgue attendant to falsify the records. Her body was taken to our house. I went into hiding. I watched from a distance as Charles and Gregory discovered the body. How they faked their grief, how they prepared for your return and the sham of the funeral. I am alive, William, hiding in a small town in Portugal, where no one knows me. The address is on the back of this letter. The key is to our new house. I know it's a lot to ask. I know it seems insane. But if you still love me, if you can forgive me for this necessary lie, come to me. We'll start over, far from all the horror our sons created. With eternal love, Emily. I reread the letter again and again, unable to process its contents. Emily alive? Another woman's body in her grave? It was too fantastic, too unbelievable. And yet, the text messages, the inscription on the headstone, this letter in her unmistakable hand. I turned the paper over. An address in Sintra, Portugal. A small town known for its palaces and lush gardens. A place where 2 old people could disappear and start over. The world I thought I knew had completely fallen apart. My sons were murderers. My wife, supposedly dead, might be alive on the other side of the ocean. My entire life. An elaborate lie. What was I supposed to do? Inform the authorities? Keep the secret? Fly to Portugal to find out the truth? I put the letter in my pocket and climbed down from the attic. The agents were still waiting outside, oblivious to the earthquake that had just shaken my existence. Did you find what you were looking for, Mr. Johnson? one of them asked. Yes, I replied, feeling a decision begin to form inside me. I found exactly what I needed. Back at the safe apartment, I sat by the window, watching the city spread out below at sunset. In my hand, the small key Emily had left in the envelope. In my mind, 1,000 unanswered questions. If Emily was really alive, why not contact the authorities directly? Why the elaborate charade? Why allow another woman to be buried in her place? The answer, painful but clear, was the same one that explained my son's actions. Fear. Emily had discovered that our own children were planning to murder us. Who could she trust with such a horror? Who would believe her? Worse, who would protect her when the murderers were the respected heirs to the Johnson Empire, with connections all over the city? Her plan, though extreme, had worked. It had exposed our sons. It had protected my life. And now, it offered me a way out. A second chance. My phone rang. It was Sanders. "Mr. Johnson, we have a problem. Charles has managed to communicate with his cartel contacts from prison. They've put a price on your head." "How much am I worth to my own son?" I asked with bitter irony. $1 million. We're going to have to move you again, maybe out of the country. Out of the country, as if fate itself were conspiring to push me towards Emily. "I need a few days to arrange some personal matters," I replied. "After that, I'll be ready to go. I'll assign you additional protection in the meantime." "Be careful, Mr. Johnson. These people won't stop at anything." I hung up, feeling a strange calm wash over me. Difficult decisions sometimes bring an unexpected clarity. I took out the photograph of the house in Portugal, a white home under a warm sun, a new beginning. The question was, did I deserve that new beginning? Could I live with the lie, with the deceit, even if it was for protection? And more importantly, could I forgive Emily for allowing another woman to be buried in her place, for orchestrating this elaborate sham, for not trusting me enough to share her suspicions from the start? Night fell over the city as I continued to stare at the photograph, the key, and the impossible future that lay before me. A future built on ashes, on lies, on betrayals. A future that, despite everything, held the only light that had ever guided my path. Emily. The decision kept me awake all night. The safe apartment, with guards posted at the door, felt like a gilded cage. In my hand, the key to a house in Portugal. In my heart, a storm of conflicting emotions. At dawn, I picked up the burner phone Sanders had given me and dialed a number I had never used before. "I need to get out of the country," I said when he answered. Without anyone knowing, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You found something at the lake house, didn't you?" His voice sounded tired, resigned. "You knew?" I asked, feeling rage ignite within me. "You knew Emily is alive." Another silence. "I suspected it," he finally admitted. "There were inconsistencies in the autopsy. The body didn't exactly match your wife's medical records. But I had no proof, and you needed justice." "Justice?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "What justice is there in this, Sanders? An innocent woman is buried in my wife's grave, and my sons are in prison for a murder they didn't commit." "Your sons tried to kill you," he reminded me harshly. "They stole millions. They laundered money for drug traffickers. Maybe they didn't kill your wife, but they are criminals who deserve to be where they are." He was right, of course. Charles and Gregory had revealed their true nature that night in my office. The syringe filled with poison had not been a hallucination. Their confession, recorded and clear, left no room for doubt. "Help me leave the country," I insisted. "After that, you can do what you think is right with the information about Emily." "Are you sure she's waiting for you?" Sanders asked, his voice softer now. "It's been weeks. If she's really in Portugal, she might have left by now." Doubt pierced my mind like a thorn. What if it was all another trap? What if I arrived in Sintra only to find an empty house and more unanswered questions? "I have to know," I finally replied. "I need to see her, to hear her side, to understand." "I'll get you documents and a private flight," Sanders conceded. "But when you get there, you'll be on your own. I won't be able to protect you." "I've been on my own since I got that first message at the funeral," I said with bitter irony. "I just didn't know it." 48 hours later, I landed in Lisbon with a fake passport and a new identity. Hector Miller, a retired businessman on a leisure trip. Sanders had kept his word, facilitating my departure from the country without alerting official authorities. From Lisbon to Sintra, a journey of just half an hour by road. I hired a taxi, feeling my heart accelerate with every mile that brought us closer to the address Emily had left. Sintra was like a fairy tale. Colorful palaces perched on green hills, lush gardens, cobblestone streets winding between centuries-old buildings. A perfect place to disappear, to reinvent oneself. The taxi dropped me at the end of a rural road. From there, according to the directions, I had to walk about 200 yards to the house. The air smelled of eucalyptus and damp earth. In the distance, the Atlantic Ocean shimmered under the afternoon sun, and then I saw it, exactly like the photograph, a white house with red tiles, surrounded by flowering trees and a small vegetable garden. A column of smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was inside. I stopped, suddenly terrified. What would I say? What would I do? How do you greet a wife who faked her own death? Before I could decide, the door of the house opened, and there she was, my Emily. Thinner, her hair now completely white, but unmistakably her. Alive, breathing, real. Our eyes met across the distance. Her eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a cry. "William!" Her voice, barely a whisper carried to me by the wind. I walked towards her as if in a trance, unable to speak, to think. When I was a few feet away, I stopped. I had rehearsed 1,000 accusations, 1,000 questions, 1,000 reproaches. But standing before her, alive, they all vanished. "You're here," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks, etched by time and worry. "You really came." "I had to see you," I replied, my voice breaking. I had to know if it was true. Emily held out a trembling hand. I took it in mine, feeling its warmth, its pulse, the undeniable proof of her existence. "Forgive me," she pleaded, "for everything. For the lie. For leaving you to face our sons alone. For— Why, Emily?" The question escaped my throat like a scream held back for too long. "Why didn't you trust me?" She looked down, her shoulders slumping under the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. "Come inside," she said simply. "There's a lot to explain." The house inside was simple but cozy. Rustic furniture, a few plants, books, a home built in a hurry but with the intention of permanence. On the wall, a single photograph, the two of us, young, smiling, in front of our first house. "When I found out what our sons were planning," Emily began, pouring tea into ceramic cups, "I wanted to tell you immediately. But then I found this." She pulled a notebook from a drawer. I recognized it instantly. Charles's personal planner. She handed it to me, open to a specific page. There, in my firstborn's neat handwriting, a terrifying plan was detailed. "Dad is getting suspicious. Too many questions about the new contracts. If he finds out the truth, we'll lose everything. Plan B is in motion." Plan B was to eliminate both of us, Emily explained. "But they were afraid that if you died first, the authorities would suspect something. I was the initial target. Then, when you were devastated by my loss, vulnerable, a tragic accident, or a suicide due to depression would follow. Why didn't you go to the police?" I tried. Her voice hardened. "I went to see Commissioner Hernandez. He listened patiently, and then he called Charles while I was still in his office. He told him his paranoid mother was making up conspiracies. The horror of her situation began to dawn on me. Alone, with no one to trust, not even her husband, as warning me could have accelerated our son's murderous plans. I hired Sanders," Emily continued, "a former Fed, no connection to the local police. He started investigating discreetly, but time was running out. Charles and Gregory were getting more impatient, more careless. I heard them arguing about dates, about methods, about alibis. And so you decided." I couldn't finish the sentence. The enormity of her decision left me speechless. "To disappear," she completed, "to give them what they wanted. My death. But on my terms. Controlled, documented. A trap that would eventually expose them. Maria Dolores Vasquez," I said, remembering the name from the letter. "The woman we buried." Emily nodded, her eyes clouding with sorrow. "A terminal patient. No family, no one to mourn her. I promised her that her body would not be forgotten, that it would rest in a place where it would receive flowers and prayers. It's not a good enough justification, I know." I stood up, unable to remain seated under the weight of these revelations. I walked to the window, looking out at the flowering garden under the Portuguese sun. A paradise built on deceit. Our sons tried to kill me, Emily, with the same tetrodotoxin they supposedly used on you. They're in prison now, facing life for your murder. "I know," she replied quietly. "Sanders kept me informed. It wasn't the original plan, but—" "But what?" I turned to her, feeling anger replace the initial shock. "What did you think would happen?" That they would confess to other crimes, but not your murder? I thought you would be safe, she answered, her eyes filled with tears. That the evidence Sanders was gathering would be enough to lock them up for fraud, for money laundering. I never imagined they would try to kill you so soon, so openly. But they did, and now they're being tried for a crime they didn't commit. A crime they would have committed if they'd had the chance, Emily retorted, a flash of hardness in her eyes. Are you defending them now, William, after what they tried to do to you? The question hit me like a slap. No, I wasn't defending them. My son's betrayal was unforgivable. The syringe in Charles's hand, the coldness in his eyes as he prepared to kill me, those memories were real. That guilt was undeniable. What do we do now? I finally asked, sitting back down across from her. Do we live here, in hiding, while the world thinks you're dead and I'm missing? While our sons are convicted for a murder that didn't happen? I don't know, Emily admitted, reaching across the table to take my hand. I only know that we're together now, and that together, as always, we'll find a way. I looked at her, really looked at her. At 68 years old, I thought I had known every facet of love and pain, but this was unexplored territory. My wife had faked her own death. She had allowed another woman to occupy her grave. She had left me alone to face the most devastating betrayal imaginable. All to protect me, all for love. Was it justifiable? I didn't know. Was it forgivable? Maybe, in time. Did I still love her? Without a single doubt. I missed you every minute, I finally said, squeezing her hand. When I thought I had lost you, a part of me died with you. I missed you too, she replied, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Every sunrise without you was a small death. We sat like that, in silence, as the sun began to set over Sintra, painting the sky in oranges and purples. Two old people, united by an impossible love, separated by a necessary deception, reunited by a relentless fate. Truth and lies, love and betrayal, justice and survival. All those lines had blurred until they were unrecognizable. The only certain thing, the only real thing, was our hands clasped on that table, in a white house in Portugal, far from everything we had ever known. And for now, that would have to be enough. The first month in Portugal passed in a strange emotional limbo. Emily and I, reunited but distant, sharing a roof but each carrying the weight of our own decisions. In the mornings, we walked to the village, buying fresh bread and fruit, exchanging polite greetings with neighbors who knew us as the retired couple. In the afternoons, we worked in the small garden or read in silence. At night, we slept in separate rooms, the abyss between us still too wide to be crossed. One morning at breakfast, Emily placed a newspaper in front of me. A newspaper from home, obtained from an international press shop in Lisbon. Charles killed himself in prison, she said in a neutral voice, though her hands trembled slightly. I read the article in silence. My firstborn son, the brilliant lawyer, the manipulator, the one who held the poison-filled syringe that night in my office, had hanged himself with his bed-sheets. It left no note. He asked for no forgiveness. I felt a dull ache in my chest. Despite everything, he was still my son, the little boy I once carried on my shoulders, whom I taught to ride a bike, whose victories I celebrated and whose tears I dried. Gregory knows now, Emily added, pointing to a smaller article. He confessed to everything during his brother's funeral. The fraud, the money laundering, the attempted murder against you. Everything except my death, because now he knows it didn't happen. How? Sanders showed him proof. My passport used to leave the country. Recent photographs. He offered him a deal, a full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. And the authorities? What do they know? Officially, I'm still dead. The exhumation revealed the body wasn't mine, but the official explanation is that there was a mix-up at the morgue, a tragic administrative error. Sanders took care of it. And me? Missing. Possibly eliminated by the cartel, though without a body to confirm it. Another unsolved case in a country full of them. So there we were, dead to the world, ghosts walking under the Portuguese sun, existing in a liminal space between truth and lies. The change came gradually, like the spring that was beginning to bloom in our garden. One afternoon, while Emily was pruning the rose bushes she had planted when she arrived, I sat beside her and asked, "What was she like?" "Who?" "Maria Dolores, the woman in your grave." Emily paused, the shears suspended in midair. She was a retired teacher. Terminal cancer. No children, no siblings. She would tell me about her students while I read to her in the afternoons at the hospital. She paused, her eyes lost in memory. When I told her my plan, she didn't hesitate. "At least my body will be useful for something good," she said. "But promise me you won't forget me." "Do you see her in your dreams?" I asked, remembering how Emily sometimes talked in her sleep, asking an unseen person for forgiveness. "Every night," she confessed, returning to her roses. "I tell her about this garden, about us, about the justice she helped bring." That night, for the first time since I arrived, we slept in the same bed. There was no passion, only the quiet comfort of two survivors, clinging to each other in the darkness. A year later, we received news that Gregory had been sentenced to 20 years in prison, not for my supposed murder, nor for his mother's, but for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The Johnson Empire had been liquidated, its assets distributed among creditors and charitable causes, just as Emily and I had originally planned. It was then that we made our decision. We couldn't keep living in the shadows, trapped between two worlds. Emily wrote a long letter to Sanders, revealing the whole truth, taking full responsibility. I added my signature at the end. I was ready to face the consequences with her. The reply came 3 weeks later. "Some secrets are best left buried. Live your lives. Justice has already been served." And so we did. We legally adopted our new identities. We bought a larger house on the coast. We planted a garden of white roses that Emily named the Garden of Maria Dolores. We started teaching Spanish to local children. We built, step by step, a new life. It has been 5 years since that funeral where I received the message that changed everything. Today, as I write these lines on our porch facing the Atlantic, Emily is napping in the hammock. At 75, she is still the bravest woman I have ever known. At 73, I have learned that love is not just about tenderness and companionship, but also about forgiveness and reinvention. We never went back. We never visited the grave where Maria Dolores rests under my wife's name. We never saw Gregory serve his sentence. Those doors are closed forever. But every night, before we sleep, we light a candle and say a prayer for everyone. For Charles, who chose death over redemption. For Gregory, paying for his crimes in solitude. For Maria Dolores, the stranger who gave us this second chance. And for ourselves, 2 old people who found peace after the storm. Sometimes, our neighbors ask why 2 elderly people decided to start over in a foreign country, far from everything familiar. Emily always answers with a smile, because it's never too late to be reborn, and she's right. In the twilight of our lives, when most are preparing for the end, we found a new beginning. A bitter miracle, built on necessary deceptions and painful truths, but a miracle nonetheless. The message I received that day at the funeral, those impossible words that changed the course of everything, turned out to be the purest truth in a world of lies. I'm still alive. Trust no one. And it was true. Emily was still alive. And in a world where our own sons had conspired to kill us, trust had become a luxury we couldn't afford, except with each other. Between us, trust was reborn, like the white roses in our garden, stronger after the pruning, more beautiful after the storm. This is our story, a story of betrayal and redemption, of death and rebirth, the story of how I lost my family, my country, and my name, but found in exile and forgiveness a peace I never thought possible. And if there is a lesson in all of this, it is that life, even in its darkest moments, always holds surprises, some devastating, others miraculous. The trick is to keep breathing, to keep loving, to keep living, until you find out which one is waiting for you around the corner. In my case, it was an impossible message on a phone during a funeral. In yours? Who knows? But keep your eyes open and your heart ready. You never know when life will send you your own message from beyond.